Hi everyone, Potion Masters chapter 40. It's the last chapter, and then I'll read the epilogue, which is the ending, kind of the ending of the ending. Okay. Are you nervous? Gordy's mom asked, coming to an abrupt halt beyond the narrow entryway into the cavern. They had been walking for quite some time and Gordy's feet ached. Both of them wore warm parkas, which are coats, and heavy waterproof boots with laces ending just below their knees. Gordy glanced behind him, noticing the 2 rows of deep footprints in an otherwise seamless white landscape. A little, yeah, he said. There was no point in denying his fear. The whole atmosphere of the location screamed creepy. It started with the barbed wire fence guarding the mountain range. His mom had passed him a pair of glasses to decode the words posted on the sign. Be warned, this is the forbidden zone of Mesrix, the scourge of nations. That didn't seem too inviting. What does Scourge of Nations mean? Gordy asked her. It means he wasn't very popular among the civilized, she answered. Then there was the airy blanket of snow covering everything. Gordy counted exactly 3 birds as they walked. Only 3. He saw nothing else living, and now they were about to enter a crack in the mountain, headed for his grandfather's cave. A grandfather who had once tried to overthrow BREW. Are you nervous? Gordy asked. His mom took a breath and held it. She stared into the cavern, twitching her nose back and forth as she contemplated the question. Slowly, she exhaled. No, it will be just fine. Dad's not a horrible man. She removed one of her gloves and blew into her cupped hand. He was always kind to Pris and me. Finally, family means a lot to him. Then why did he do all those things? Gordy asked. In his mind, he believed he was doing right. She squeezed Gordy's arm. But he was wrong, Gordy, so very wrong. No matter what he tells you in there, remember that. He can be convincing when he wants to, and that could be dangerous. You don't want to let him influence you in any way. He won't, Mom, Gordy nodded reassuringly. I don't even know the guy, and I probably won't like him. His mom smiled, but her eyes revealed sadness. I wish that were the case, dear. The first thing Gordy noticed about his grandfather as he stood in the mouth of the cave was his hair. There was so much of it that it seemed to flow out like the mane of a white lion. He was dirty and old, wrinkly and skinny. He wore a tuxedo, at least that's what Gordy thought it looked like, and he was barefoot. In a word, Gordy initially thought his Grandpa Rook looked evil, but as they drew closer, Gordy received a better look at his face. He noticed his grandfather's eyes. They seemed kind, thoughtful, and maybe even a little timid. Grandpa Rook moistened his lips and clasped his hands together. Well, hello, Gordy. How do you do? Gordy glanced at his mom for confirmation, and she encouraged him with a reassuring nod. I'm okay, he said. How are you? Grandpa Rook narrowed his eyes. Freezing. Should we gather around the fire? I've prepared a meal. He held up his hands. No worries, Wanda. This particular batch of gruel won't be tainted. The inside of the cave was simple. A few pieces of furniture, chairs, a bed, a bookcase or 2. A warm fire burned in the center of the room, heating a black pot. Gordy could smell potatoes and savory herbs and started to feel a hint of hunger. They had a good meal on the flight, but their hike up the mountain had only allowed for trail mix and fruit. No caribou moss? His mom asked, pointing to the pot. Where did you get all that? This is a special occasion, so I pulled out all the stops, Mesrix said. After dinner, Grandpa Rook requested to speak with Gordy alone. To Gordy's surprise, his mother didn't object. So tell me what you know, he said to Gordy once they were seated next to each other around the fire. About you? Gordy asked. That you died in a farming accident in Idaho before I was born. At least that's what Mom told me until recently. Now, I guess I heard you were a very powerful elixirist who kind of went crazy. Mesrix twiddled his thumbs and stared at the cavern floor. Kind of, I suppose. This felt awkward. What were they supposed to talk about? Gordy couldn't help but look at his grandfather's bare feet. They had to be freezing. Don't you have socks or boots or something? Unfortunately, no. I can't wear them. The banishment terms won't allow it. That's how they keep me here. Oh, Gordy wanted to ask more about the whole banishment thing, but he wasn't sure how or where to start. It's not so bad, though. His grandfather lifted his feet and wiggled his toes. I apply a warming balm to my soles every morning. It keeps out most of the cold. Gordy raised his eyebrows. Cool. I mean, that's awesome. So you're still allowed to make stuff while you're banished? He grinned bashfully. Well, no. Technically, I shouldn't even have any ingredients, but a true elixirist will always find a way, you know. Speaking of which, your mother has told me quite a deal about you and your abilities. Care to share with an old man? Gordy nodded enthusiastically. What do you want to know? The two of them spent the next hour testing Gordy's deciphering abilities on several of Mazurix's personal potions. Gordy recognized every ingredient in every vial just by means of his nose. The old man was noticeably impressed. Mazurix tried filtering next, or the art of removing potentially hazardous ingredients from concoctions and rendering them harmless. Gordy displayed equal skill in that as well. Then came time to blind batch. I don't know what that means, Gordy said. Simply put, it is the art of mixing potions blindly without a menu or prior direction, his grandpa said. Have you ever known what to add to a mixture? Gordy thought back to when he made the ice ball to stop Baudry. He had just known what would work and what wouldn't, and it hadn't been the first time doing that either. In fact, he had made many potions without any knowledge beforehand of what to do. His grandfather seemed to understand Gordy's expression and nodded. Blind batching is a rare talent. You could go your whole life and never meet anyone with such a gift. Can you do it? Gordy asked. I can, and it would appear the skill has passed on to you. What should we make, Gordy? Mazurix held out his hand toward the cauldron. I have some ingredients at my disposal. What would you want to create? I don't understand. It doesn't work that way with me. Maybe Gordy really couldn't blind batch. Maybe his grandfather was mistaken. I don't think of what I want to do and then just do it. It's different. How's it different? Well, it's kind of like I start with an empty cauldron, and then I add an ingredient. After I do that, I add another one, and then another. And then something tells me to turn down the heat or to stir it differently. It was difficult to explain, but that was how it worked. It's the same with me, only I've come to realize how to control it. The mind builds based on necessity. So whether you understand it or not, your brain has already decided what you need before you start. Trust me, when I tell you this, there are no limits for you, Gordy Stitzer. The two of them whispered back and forth. They told jokes. Gordy frequently laughed, and his grandfather even managed to sneak in a proud, gentle clap on his grandson's back from time to time. It was as though the two of them had known each other for all Gordy's life and were finally having a grand reunion. When Wanda reappeared in the cave clutching the Eternity Elixir, only then did they cease their jovial discussion. It's time, she said. You should stay longer. I could make a couple of beds, something more comfortable. You could leave in the morning, Mazurix suggested. Gordy's mom shook her head. I've made travel arrangements already. I need to get my son back home and to a normal life. Mazurix looked on the verge of protesting, but he gave a sideways glance to Gordy and closed his mouth. Okay, bring me the elixir. Gordy watched his mother across the room. She hesitated a moment before handing the vial over to her father. Relax, dear, Mazurix said soothingly. I'll keep my end of the bargain. You know I will. The ceremony wasn't as complicated as the one Esmeralda performed at BREW, but it was remarkable to watch. Seeing his grandfather concoct was witnessing a master at work. Using only the ingredients at his table, Grandpa Rook created a mixture into which he added several drops of his blood. That's how it all started, he explained to the two of them. Because of my blood connection, I'm the only one who could have ever destroyed it. He gave Gordy's mom an awkward grin. But you already knew that, didn't you? She held his gaze for a moment and then nodded. I had my suspicions, but I didn't dare bring you the vial because I knew you would never destroy it. Until now, Mazurix said, giving Gordy a quick wink before returning his attention to the potion. He finalized the ceremony by pouring every ounce of the Eternity Elixir into his cauldron. The potion produced a soft, hissing sound as the steam drifted toward the ceiling. It's done, Mazurix said. That's it? Gordy asked, somewhat put out by how quietly the potion had ended. It had caused a great deal of turmoil, and to suddenly be over without so much as a mini explosion was depressing. That's it. Grandpa Rook's nostrils flared. My greatest creation is no more. Really? Gordy looked at his mom for proof. I apologize if I don't trust you, Dad, Wanda said. She held out her hand for the empty vial. I'll take that with me, just to be sure. You won't need to, but if that's what you wish, he gave her the bottle. Regardless, I'll take the vial to BREW and do a thorough scan. Just so you know, I've also used the vessel to increase the strength of your banishment. Mesrix opened his mouth in shock. What will that do to me? She smiled evenly. It will limit your abilities once more. He bowed his head solemnly. I understand. You did what you thought was best. As Gordy's mom helped Gordy put back on his coat, Grandpa Rook handed him a small leather book from his shelf. What's this? Gordy asked, carefully handling the delicate pages. I keep a journal of my secret creations. It helps clear my head. I scribble down ingredients on even the ones I haven't tested yet. Gordy looked at him in amazement. I do too. He had never known anyone else, other than his mother, to share information about a private collection of special potions. Of course you do. You're my blood. I want you to take it, Gordy, and study it. I can have your journal? Absolutely. After all, since your mother has increased my banishment strength, I don't foresee an immediate opportunity to brew any time soon. Mesrix brushed Gordy's shoulder with his hand and pursed his lips together. You know, it may not mean much to you, considering how little we know of each other, but I want you to understand how proud I am to call you my grandson. Maybe one day your mom will let you come back for a visit. What do you say, Wanda? Gordy's mom remained straight-faced. We'll see. But Gordy knew she had no intention of ever allowing him back to his grandfather's forbidden zone. Farewell, Wanda. His grandpa looked as though he desired an embrace, but his mom merely nodded. Mesrix extended his hand to Gordy. So long, grandson. Take care and be good. The Stitzer's flight out of Nuke, Greenland, didn't depart until the following morning, but they had a long journey ahead back to the village several miles south. What did you think of Grandpa Rook? Gordy's mom asked. Gordy shrugged. His grandfather was nothing like he expected. Gordy couldn't quite think of the right word to describe him, but the word wicked probably suited him best. Wicked in a good way. He's not so bad. She smiled. And he's kind of like me. We can do all the same things. He keeps a potion journal just like I do. It's cool. It's weird, but cool. Gordy's mom slowed down and came to a stop. She lifted Gordy's chin with her index finger and looked him in the eyes. He is like you, but the difference is you're not like him. Do you understand that? Gordy thought about it and then shook his head. Yes, you both share the same talents. You can do things I could only dream of doing, and so can your Grandpa Rook. In fact, I suspect one day you will surpass him in your abilities. You could even become the greatest elixirist the world has ever known. She pulled Gordy into a hug. But there is one major difference between you and Grandpa Rook. What's that? Gordy asked, squeezing her tightly. You are good, Gordy Stitzer, and that will make all the difference in the end. End of chapter 40. Here's the epilogue. Mesrix sat cross-legged on the floor. Strewn about him were the bones and remains of his dinner. Rotisserie bat had been a little chewier than he hoped, but his stomach was full and he was content. A light snow had begun to fall and an icy breeze blew in, causing the dwindling flames of the fire to flicker. Mesrix glanced up from staring at something in his fingers and startled at the sight of a figure standing in the entryway of the cave. As the figure stepped fully into the room and the soft glow of the firelight glinted off his body, the wizened scourge immediately relaxed. It's been over a month, Doll, Mesrix said. I've been lonely. Doll looked different. He was still all bones and had his same egg-shaped head, but the drawn-on face had worn off completely. Water dripped from his limbs and chunks of ice clung to his ribs. There was soggy seaweed dangling from his chin like a cow's cud, and the remaining evidence of Doll's journey, which had taken him deep into the ocean as he made his way home to Mesrix's cave. What took you so long? Mesrix asked. I've been waiting for your assistance. Doll made no answer. He stood awaiting his command. I need you to gather a few things for me. I know you just got back and are probably exhausted, but I must insist. Mesrix stood. He still held something pinched between his fingers, but examined a list of ingredients he had jotted down. Most of these items you'll find on the north end of the property, but you should make haste. A storm appears to be brewing, one that will be quite nasty, I believe. Mesrix looked at his servant. What? What is it? Doll tilted his head down to one side, pointing to the object in Mesrix's fingers. You want to know what this is? Mesrix asked. This might be nothing. He held out the thin fiber of brown hair. a strand Mesrix had plucked from his grandson Gordy's head. Or, Mesrix said with a smile, this might be everything. The end. The end, the end. Hope you enjoyed it.